היה זה בוקר יום ראשון, העיירה עוד ישנה, והוא ממשיך ושר, שר מול חלונה. נזכר איך הוא וחבריו ישבו בבית קפה קטן, כשהיא יצאה לרחוב כמו סופה אל ים. ליבו כמעט הפסיק לפעום, הוא התאהב בה במקום, כשהיא שלחה אליו מבט, העולם שתק. עכשיו כמעט חצי שנה, שהוא עוד שר אל חלונה, והיא סגורה אליו, דלת נעולה. ואז בליל ירח חם, מעייפות כמעט נרדם, נדלק האור שבחדרה, זה בוקר יום ראשון, העיירה עוד ישנה, והוא ממשיך ושר, שר מול חלונה. ואת ההיא הוא כבר שכח, הקסם המתוק חלף, מאז נדלק אותו האור שם בחלונה. כמה אהב אותה, את יופיה, את האור בשערה, את עיניה השחורות שהכל יודעות, כמה רצה אותה אני אומר לך מילה אחת יותר מדי, תחייכי, תקשיבי, זה לא מאוחר. לפעמים אני מרגיש כאילו זאת הפעם האחרונה, כאילו אין מחר. צריך לומר את המילה הנכונה, ותמיד את איתי מחכה שאחזור, ואני כמו שיקור מתעלם מהאור, מציירת תמונה שלי ושלה, צבעים לבנים, שמיים כחולים.
לבוא בין הגלים, אני אולי מרגישה כאילו זאת הפעם הראשונה. יום חדש מתחיל, צריך לומר את המילה הנכונה, ותמיד אתה איתי, יודע שטוב לי, חושבת המון, לוקחת מכחול, מציירת תמונה שלי ושלך, צבעים לבנים, שמיים כחולים, ותמיד אתה איתי, יודע שטוב לי,
ואני כמו שיקור מתעלם מהאור, מציירת תמונה שלי ושלה, צבעים לבנים.
Shalom and good evening to the Hebrew University's friends and supporters around the world, and welcome to the 2021 Board of Governors taking place under the banner For a Better World. I'm your host, Hila Korach. I'm a journalist, Israeli television news anchor, and for the last 3 years, a physician. I am honored to be joined on stage by Hebrew University President Professor Asher Cohen, Vice President for Advancement and External Relations, Ambassador Yossi Gal, Vice President for Strategy and Diversity, Muna Khoury-Kassabri, and on Zoom we have our Board of Governors Chairman, Mr. Dan Schlesinger, our devoted Board of Governors members and friends from around the world. Thank you to each and every one of you for joining us. Please feel free to leave questions or comments in the chat box, and we will do our best to respond at the end of the day. Today, as we continue to grapple with the coronavirus pandemic, we find ourselves meeting virtually for the second time. The unique challenges presented by this last year and a half have reinforced the importance of advancing humanity through science, research, and scientific tools. In addition, academic institutions and laboratories have proven as the best greenhouses in which to cultivate the finest minds and develop the best scientific and technological solutions. Indeed, the totality of academia, faculty, researchers, and students alike is striving to develop and come up with solutions for a better world, to improve and then improve even more, to promote values and solutions that will benefit humanity in myriad ways. Over the next 2 days, we will present a comprehensive review of everything that has taken place upon the Hebrew University campuses over the last years since the previous Board of Governors. You will see how we channel all our hard work towards a single goal, making the world a better place. We are all honored to have the President of Israel, Mr. Herzog, open the Board of Governors with his greetings. President Herzog, welcome.
Dear friends, members of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem Board of Governors in Israel and around the world, Bruchim Habayim to all of you. Welcome. I am pleased to greet you at the opening plenary of the 84th Board of Governors of this monumental institution. I'd like also to acknowledge my dear friend, University President, Professor Asher Cohen, and of course the Dean and the faculty and all of the students, all those who are giving their life to this institution. For over a century, the Hebrew University has championed the tradition of innovation and its historic importance, which is quite unparalleled. The mere mention of the Hebrew University's founding fathers elicits great awe and admiration. Towering figures such as Chaim Weizmann, Arthur James Balfour, Albert Einstein, Yehuda Leib Magnus, great visionaries who understood the deep significance of a world-class Hebrew university in the heart of Jerusalem. I am certain that even they could not have estimated the revolutionary impact this university would have had on Israeli society, nor on the global academic community. My own family's linkage to the university goes back 4 generations, interwoven with the history of this fort of wisdom, education, scholarship, and strength. The hope was to gather in person here in Jerusalem to confer honorary doctorates and celebrate fellowships and hold moving dedication ceremonies and experience inspirational AJUJI talks. However, this virtual gathering suggested deeper understanding of the title for this Board of Governors, which reads, "For a Better World." When we first heard of COVID-19, we dismissed it as a remote incident far away in the Far East. Nearly 2 years later, it is clear how dramatically our world was impacted by it. So as we convene over many screens, thousands of miles apart, we grasp the potential global effects of our discussions, choices, and actions. We know that what we do here matters, and we are better equipped to appreciate the significance of what it means to have a better world, such as Tikkun Olam. Friends, it is my hope that the 85th Board of Governors of the Hebrew University of Yerushalayim, please God, will indeed convene in Jerusalem. But until then, thank you all for your essential ongoing support, for your continued friendship, and for the better world you are all helping to build. Stay safe, healthy, have a happy new year, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your warm remarks and your ongoing support. Now, I am pleased to share greetings from the Chairman of the Board of Governors of the Hebrew University, a man who has worked endlessly to create a better world, Mr. Daniel Schlesinger.
Shalom lekulam. Welcome, everyone, to this meeting of the Board of Governors of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. I'm very grateful to all of you for being here, and particularly grateful to President Bougie Herzog for sharing comments with us here today. I know we all share some frustration at not being able to meet in person yet again and greet each other in Jerusalem, but our frustration is probably not as great as some of the issues that were confronting world Jewry 100 years ago. In keeping with our recent tradition of recognizing the centennial of the Hebrew University, let me make some preliminary remarks about what was going on that impacted the university 100 years ago in 1921. Almost exactly 100 years ago, in September of 1921, World Jewry, the World Zionist Organization, was meeting in Carlsbad, Czechoslovakia. This was a particularly significant meeting because World War I had interrupted the Congress from meeting. The meetings began in 1897, and the Congress met every year from 1897 until they began meeting every 2 years. And then in 1913, they had their last meeting before the war interrupted the ability to get together. So 1921 was significant. It had been 8 years since the group had gotten together. And it was significant also because of the developments that had occurred in the intervening years. Aside from the war, we had the Balfour Declaration in 1917 and the San Remo Conference in 1920, confirming the Balfour sentiments of the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. One would have thought that because of those developments and because of the long time between meetings, that the 1921 conference would be a joyous celebration of everybody getting together and unifying to redouble efforts to help develop the Jewish state in Palestine. Unfortunately, a lot of the news coming out of the conference was about a major rift that had developed, had been brewing between the European and the American leadership of the Congress. Prior to the 1921 meeting, the leaders of the movement had been largely European, people like Herzog and Weizmann and Jabotinsky, and they had created the structure and formed the unquestioned leadership of the Congress. But of course, the impact of World War I was felt much more severely in Europe than in the United States. And the impact of the war, aside from the horrific violence that it entailed, included a real growth in anti-Semitism in Europe. In contrast, the American Jewish community was mostly flourishing during those intervening years, and it became clear that the future financing and the future leadership that was concomitant with where the money was coming from would be from the United States. The organized membership of the Zionist organizations in the United States had grown from about 200,000 at the time of the prior conference to over 1 million at the time of the 1921 conference. The emerging head of the American Zionist movement was Louis Brandeis, a brilliant lawyer from Louisville, Kentucky, who in 1916 had been appointed by President Harding to be the first Jewish justice of the United States Supreme Court. Unlike most of the European leadership, Brandeis reflected a very different position on Zionism. He was raised in a religiously secular, although culturally Jewish household, and he came to Zionism somewhat later in life. He came with a growing commitment to the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine, but in contrast to the Europeans, had no intention of himself moving to Palestine and had no thought that Zionism necessarily entailed that kind of commitment. In addition, Weizmann and the European leaders had thought that Zionism and the Congress was best served by centralized leadership, and that had always been the case. In contrast, Brandeis was very interested in separate national groups leading their own Zionist organizations and putting in place the most competent, most qualified leaders who could plan for creating the infrastructure of the state, for the most efficient and competent financing and implementation of the plan for the creation of the state. While he was a fully committed Zionist, Brandeis was also largely an assimilated American Jew. And he faced a significant obstacle in popularizing Zionism in the United States, while at the same time maintaining his stature as a leader on the Supreme Court. In particular, he had to fend off the constant charges that his commitment to a Jewish state necessarily implied a dual loyalty that called into question his patriotism and his commitment to the rising power of America. These sentiments pushed him to a form of Zionism premised on the creation of a Jewish state founded on principles that he believed were key to the American ideal. the attainment of the common good through democracy and social justice. And that gave rise to his famous quote, "To be good Americans, we must be better Jews, and to be better Jews, we must become Zionists." Brandeis's approach essentially was to argue persuasively that to be anti-Zionist was in fact to be anti-American. The differences in these attitudes gave rise to a dispute between Brandeis and Weizmann that became so bitter that Brandeis and his segment of the American leadership actually boycotted the 1921 conference in Czechoslovakia, despite the huge significance that it had, as mentioned earlier. The direct significance of that for the Hebrew University was very profound. As some of you may recall, a couple of years ago, I presented a summary of the life of Julian Mack, an incredible American, Chicagoan, who was a judge, a leader of the rising social work movement, a founder of the Harvard Law Review, a founder of the ACLU and the NAACP, and had many more contributions. Mack was also a member, as you may recall, of the first Board of Governors of the Hebrew University, something that Brandeis was not. Mack was, though, very much an ally of Brandeis in the efforts to transform the approach of the Zionist movement. So when Weizmann and Einstein made their famous 1921 pilgrimage to America, which we have talked about quite a bit over the last few years, they were raising funds for two primary purposes. One was the Keren HaYesod, the fund to support everything needed to create the Jewish state, and also to raise money for the Hebrew University. In keeping with his opposition to the centralized leadership that Weizmann stood for, Brandeis opposed the concept of the Keren HaYesod. He thought that funding should be funneled to the individual groups that had particular practical purposes in the Zionist movement. And that led him to not support the Weizmann-Einstein effort to meet with wealthy American Jews. In fact, Einstein and Weizmann had established a goal of raising $4 million for the Hebrew University from their new trip, but Brandeis actually refused to meet with Weizmann, and with the additional influence of the aforementioned Julian Mack, much of the wealthiest Jewish philanthropic community declined to meet with Weizmann and Einstein on this trip. And as a result, while still deemed to be successful, the Weizmann-Einstein efforts to raise money for the new University of the Jewish People raised only $750,000, about 20% of their goal. While Brandeis was clearly in favor of the creation of the Hebrew University and did actually meet with Einstein, he never agreed to be on the Board of Governors of the new university, which constitutes a dramatic hole in our history. In any event, our frustration 100 years later at still not meeting in person these past 2 years pales in comparison to the issues that were being dealt with 100 years ago, and I'm happy to say were eventually overcome. Today, we celebrate a united, cooperative, worldwide effort to support our incredibly successful university with all kinds of achievements, both academic and financial, that you will hear more about over the course of these meetings. As always, thank you all for your commitment and support. I look forward to hearing some exciting things about what's going on at the university in the coming meetings, and eventually to being together in person. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, and with that, let me call to order these meetings of the Board of Governors of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem.
Together in person, what a concept. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for your words and for your years of devoted leadership. Thank you to our distinguished university leadership. We will see you back on stage shortly. science, research, and an unabated curiosity to know and understand the world around us are all indicative of the basic human drive to improve and grow. Anything and everything human comprehension has been or will be able to conquer is aimed at a single goal: to improve the human condition and create a harmonious, better, smarter, and more equitable world. This year's Board of Governors is taking place under the banner For a Better World, which is also one of the strategic priority areas of the Hebrew University's current capital campaign. This title holds great promise while also being central to the university's mission, directing all that we do. Please join me in watching a video featuring a number of fascinating current projects that are underway at Hebrew University.
I grew up in a community where health is a luxury. Access to health was almost impossible. It was difficult for patients to actually get to the hospital. What I like most about the program is the fact that we are able to look at the global aspect of health and then use the strategy into direct actions in your own community. So it's quite amazing. I was able to design for the first time a novel program in Cameroon, which helps to increase healthcare access in communities where there are no health facilities.
I love my job. In the legal center, we have 9 clinics. I'm the director of the International Human Rights Clinic. The clinic aims to promote human rights in Israel, mainly to help people who don't have citizenship in Israel. I think we'll make a better world because we're a bridge between academia and real life, and we can help people outside of the academia and see reality from their eyes. We learn how reality really is and what legal questions should be raised, and we bring this back to the academia and try to develop the law on these directions.
We have a huge problem in Nigeria, and that's the problem of youth unemployability. So the programs that I run really helps to train them on basic employability skills they need to get into the workplace. And you're just adding just a little bit of the expert knowledge that you have to help out, as against going in with the savior mentality to rescue people. My current dream is to be able to connect a lot of Israeli technologies to the African market for a better world, absolutely, yeah. And to make life easier for people.
I'm from the Department of Microbiology and Molecular Genetics, and we're trying to develop vaccines, serological kits, immunotherapy, being a doctor, physician, and the researcher in the same time. I think it's the most powerful thing you can do. This year, I was one of the winners of the Marilyn Green Robson Scholarship. Winning a scholarship is meaning that I can focus more on my research instead of worrying so much about how am I going to pay the tuition. If I can study more, if I can research more, eventually I can help the humanity more, I can help my future patients more and study further in my field.
I'm a medical student, but I'm also part of the Aspar Huji Innovation programs. In my program, we take ideas that we come up with in the lab and we commercialize them for the whole world to know them and to use them and to benefit from them.
The Hebrew University is a hub for innovation and technology. We have a great history of farming in the desert with limited soil, limited water. So what we are doing is to produce more with less carbon emission, less hunger to third world countries, which are still struggling to come up with more food for their people. And I believe this will create a better world in the future.
Beyond improving life with inventions and discoveries in the fields of health, sustainability, technology, and more, we believe in providing equal access to higher education and legal services and empowering communities to manage themselves. The Hebrew University of Jerusalem is creating a better world day by day.
Public health for a better world.
Innovation for a better world.
Justice for a better world.
Finding a cure for a better world.
Community development for a better world.
Sustainability for a better world.
How inspiring was that? Moving from what our students are doing for a better world, Professor Asher Cohen, president of the Hebrew University, will share a recap of the university's teaching and research these past years. Please welcome Professor Cohen.
It is a great pleasure to see you, if virtually, today. Yes, we would much rather meet you here in Jerusalem as we planned to do. But we are all aware of the pandemic situation that we have been confronting, and I'm truly happy that we have this virtual alternative. It even has some advantages. Many hundreds of our governors and friends attend this session, and this is heartwarming. With all this said, I truly hope and believe that our next Board of Governors will be done live in June here in Jerusalem. Last week, we started the fall semester. As you all know, the previous 3 semesters were done primarily virtually. There are several indications that we managed to do it successfully. One of our goals every year is to decrease the number of students that drop out of the university. The dropout rate during the pandemic was actually smaller than in previous years. In addition, every year we run a survey in which we ask our students about their experience. The level of satisfaction of the students this year from the university in general and teaching in particular was actually higher than in previous years. It continues a trend that started under the leadership of our rector, and we managed to keep this trend during the pandemic as well. So, we are very proud of what we did under very difficult conditions we all experienced in the last 2 years. And yet, we also know that there are clear limitations to this type of full virtual learning. It is in some ways like a bit like the Board of Governors. We can do it well virtually, but it is not quite the same. Students benefit greatly from live interactions. There are courses which require discussion sessions that are not done well virtually. And there are several other clear benefits to studies in the campuses. So, I'm happy to tell you that for the first time since the COVID pandemic hit us, the majority of the courses are taking place in the campuses. And yet, the teaching in this semester is going to be different and I hope significantly better than the live semesters we used to have prior to the pandemic. We acquired during the last 2 years many technology-based teaching skills and we are going to use them heavily during the semester. To protect our community from the virus, we require our students and staff either to be vaccinated or present a test showing that they do not carry the COVID virus. And so far, the semester is 1 week old, all seems well health-wise. In this picture, you can see the Mount Scopus campus during midday. It is always exciting to see all these many students and faculty in the university corridors when the year begins. I think it was particularly exciting, indeed special, to see it this year after 3 semesters of empty corridors. In previous meetings, we described at length many lines of research that were developed during the pandemic that were specifically directed at various aspects of the crisis. These lines of research covered many different COVID-related topics, ranging from improvement of methods for testing to social and cultural implications of the pandemic. Several projects focused on possible therapies for infected people that suffer from various types of serious illnesses caused by the virus. A big challenge here is that developing therapies for any illness is typically a long process that requires, in most cases, initial research on rodents, followed by several phases of human testing, which often takes many years. One way to accelerate this process is to explore drugs that were already approved and are at use for other diseases and examine whether they can be used for the COVID-related illnesses. To do so, one needs to fully understand what the medicine should do to alleviate the disease, and then explore among the many thousands of existing drugs whether there is a drug that can do that. We are lucky to have two such successful projects at the Hebrew University, one headed by Professor Shai Arkin and one headed by Professor Kobi Nachmias. We may be just a few months away from having these drugs approved for treatment of COVID-related diseases. We will now see a recording of Professor Nachmias briefly describing the current state of his research, and then Professor Arkin will describe his research.
My name is Yaakov Nachmias. I'm the director of the Grass Center for Bioengineering at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And today, I'm going to talk about animal-free drug development and everything we did these last 2 years to solve the COVID-19 pandemic. As you all know, drug development is a very expensive endeavor. It costs more than $2 billion in more than 12 years to bring a single drug to the market. The main problem is that most of our research is still dependent on rats and mice, small animals that are very, very different from humans. Rats and mice have different physiology, different metabolism, and different genetics than humans. And a lot of the things that we find in them are simply not relevant to the human condition. To change that, we have invested the last 6 years at the Hebrew University to develop a novel human-on-chip platform. We are taking human cells with human genetics and making small organs that mimic human physiology. The organs that we have include a heart that has different chambers and a pacemaker, lungs, kidneys, liver, and brain, all living together. What makes the platform especially unique is not that we have all of those organoids that are very, very complex and are exactly like us, but the fact that these are bionic organs. We have sensors physically integrated into those organs. Sensors that can measure mechanical activity, electrical activity, and metabolic function in real time. They tell us things that we couldn't even imagine that we could get from animal studies. We can understand basic mechanisms of disease in a way that was not thought to be possible before. The real challenge we faced 2 years ago in trying to understand the novel coronavirus made us very, very unique in this space. You see, coronaviruses are known for many years. Actually, they're thought to evolve here in the Middle East thousands of years ago. Most cases, it gives you a common cold. You cough a little bit, you drink chicken soup, and you go back home. But this new generation of beta coronaviruses like SARS, MERS, or the SARS-CoV-2, which is the novel coronavirus, actually cause severe acute respiratory distress. Your lungs become inflamed, and you get a cytokine storm that damages other organs in your body. What's really unique is that the comorbidities, the problems that will get you to the hospital, are not inflammatory diseases of the lung. It's not asthma. It's actually diabetes, obesity, dyslipidemia, so high levels of cholesterol in your blood. These will get you to the hospital and the ER and maybe even the ICU. So we struggle to understand why this is the case. We partnered 2 years ago with the Mount Sinai Hospital to use our lung model to look at the metabolic changes induced by the virus. And what we saw was incredibly surprising. This novel coronavirus caused this massive accumulation of lipids in the lungs. The virus needed those fats. It actually had to have them to replicate. And we could stop that using fenofibrate, a drug that was approved by the FDA back in 1975. We could show that lipids could completely disappear, and the virus replication was gone by 4 days of treatment. We took this discovery to the clinic, treating severe COVID-19 patients with funding by Abbott. Those patients were completely transformed. Inflammation of the lungs disappeared in 48 hours. What's more exciting is that they didn't develop a cytokine storm. The rest of the organs were fine. Respiratory support was not needed anymore. We could remove all of these patients from respiratory support in less than a week. And we could release them from the hospital just as fast. The most exciting piece of data came in a month and 3-month follow-up. Usually, COVID-19 causes severe problems down the line, even after you recover from the virus. Cardiovascular problems, lung problems, neurological problems. Only one patient reported problems in our study after a month, and actually none of them reported studies after 3 months. That's compared to more than 35% of the population. We're very excited to take this data forward, and we're very thankful for all of the support of the Board of Governors, specifically for the Sam and Rina Frankel Foundation, as well as the Nikua Foundation that supported my lab all these years. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. I wish I could say with you, but let us hope for next year. I wanted to share with you some of the exciting work that we've been doing to try to curb viral diseases. And what we're trying to do is to provide a rapid solution for these infections. Now, you see, the challenge that we're trying to overcome is that there are no platforms to generate antiviral drugs. Every antiviral drug that was devised necessitated a unique strategy, and that's the reason why it takes us so much time in order to combat every new pandemic. So what is our solution? Our solution is to look at the ingenuity and amazing resourcefulness of bacteria, the most amazing creatures on this planet. And why do I say these accolades? Because bacteria are able to resist nearly every external threat that you provide them. They're able to live in extreme temperatures, extreme salinity and acidity. They're able to combat and develop resistance against any chemical that you throw at them, i.e. antibiotic resistance, and they're also able to withstand radioactivity. But the problem is that bacteria and viruses reside in parallel universes. One does not affect the other. Viruses are not a threat to bacteria, so why would the bacteria generate agents that harm these viruses? Now, the solution that we came up with is ion channels. So what are ion channels? They're components that are found in every organism that enable it to generate a safe environment for itself, to regulate its internal salinity and acidity. Interestingly, many viruses also have these channels that they use to regulate their environment, and without that, they're unable to conduct their infectious cycle. As a family, ion channels are fantastic drug targets, and in fact, many drugs that we take against high blood pressure and numerous other indications block channels. Now, the best thing about ion channels, and that's the trick of our technology, is when you express viral ion channels in bacteria, they actually impact bacterial viability. So you see, for the first time in evolutions, bacteria finally have a reason to combat the virus, and the solutions that bacteria can come up with may be beneficial for us. So the task at hand is relatively simple. The first thing that we need to do is to identify and confirm ion channels in the particular virus that we're interested in. We then need to screen for blockers. And finally, bacteria also enable you to assess the resistance potential against any new antiviral drug that you generate. So what's our current progress? Obviously, everyone, including ourselves, is interested in COVID-19. And what we've already shown, using all of our bacterial assays, is that the virus contains two channels. SARS-CoV-2 contains two channels, and for us, a channel equals a target that we can block. We've screened roughly 3,000 approved for human use drugs against them, and we were able to identify close to 8 inhibitors for each one of these channels. The most exciting part of our work came when we were able to show that these compounds that we found inhibit the virus itself. This obviously necessitated a biosafety level 3 lab, but once again, we were very fortunate to have the Friends of the Hebrew University provide support and to be able to stock up our lab and to make it as functional as we require. The next phase, which we are currently starting right now, are animal trials, and we are very, very hopeful that those will prove that the compounds that we found are actually anti-COVID agents. And to give you an example, this is the only data slide that I'm going to show you. An example of what this looks like is to actually check for viability of cells as a function of viral infestivity. So you can see on the left, you have cells that are grown for 48 hours, and on the right, the column that says no drug, you can see that close to half of them die because of viral infection. But when you give them small concentrations of the drug that we have found, in this instance darapladib, you can see that it prevents viral-driven death almost entirely. And I can think of no better example of antiviral efficacy. Because we're talking about a platform, I can prove that because we've already identified channels in other important pathogens such as Zika, dengue, West Nile virus, and even hepatitis B. We've identified blockers against each and every one of those, and currently we are assessing the efficacy of these blockers against the whole virus. So to sum it up quickly, we are very hopeful. We're hopeful that we were able to come up with a platform that can respond rapidly to viral threats. And as an example, one of these compounds, and in fact 2 of them, are potent anti-COVID agents. So let's hope that the next time that we meet, I'll be able to tell you about our success in person.
Thank you, Kobe and Shai. The more typical development of therapies caused by pathogens, such as viruses and bacteria, often requires experiments with live pathogens. Dealing with live pathogens is, of course, dangerous and requires a special lab called ABSL-3 that enables us to deal with such pathogens in rodents and do it safely. Up to now, there was no such lab in Israel. With the generosity of Boris Kolnick and with a significant donation by Cheryl and Brad Schwartz, we built a brand new ABSL-3 lab that you see now in the picture. Because it is the only such lab in Israel, it will be a national lab that will accommodate all researchers in Israel that have no ideas how to tackle the pathogen and need to test its operation in animals. I expect that many truly important discoveries will come out of this lab that will help us fight the COVID pathogen as well as other unwelcome pathogens. One cannot exaggerate the potential importance of this lab. We expect some truly groundbreaking results that may benefit society and our fight against the COVID to come out of these research projects. And of course, throughout this time, we also made a great deal of effort to continue our research activities. As you know, we have many leading centers at the university, spanning areas from the humanities to physics and everything in between. We try to establish new centers for 2 primary reasons that often coexist. One, as science progresses, new research areas emerge that push the envelope of knowledge. Second, sometimes a need arises for research in a particular area. In this time and age, most of our new research centers are interdisciplinary in nature. For example, we recently established the Center for Computational Medicine, both because there is an urgent need for finding remedies to debilitating diseases, and because the progress of science in both biomedicine and computer science enables us to discover new and exciting paths that may lead us to groundbreaking findings. Today, I would like to present to you two other important and exciting areas of research. Last year, we established a university-wide center focusing on sustainability. Sustainability refers to our wish to make sure that future generations will have at least as good conditions to live and as many resources as we do today. In past generations, it was almost a truism that the conditions in the world are steadily improving. Unfortunately, we are all aware of the changing climate on our planet and realize that many things that we have taken for granted may not be here in the future if we do not change our behavior. Sustainability has many dimensions. There is a need to make sure that there will be enough food in the future. We would like to use renewable energy, such as the sun and the wind, and reduce dramatically the use of energies that leave a carbon stamp in our atmosphere. We need to change our policies to protect the planet. We need to understand what might be the conditions that would potentially stop and hopefully even reverse the climate change we are experiencing, and so on. And we also need to educate our students and make sure that they are well prepared for a future that might be complicated. From this description, it is clear that sustainability is inherently a multidisciplinary concept. We already have many researchers that are focused on specific aspects of sustainability. A major goal of our center is to encourage an interdisciplinary approach in which sustainability researchers from these different areas will collaborate in order to produce insights that are not possible without interdisciplinary research. Professor Yael Mishael, the head of the center, and several other researchers will now describe some of the current activities of the center.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the globe. Today I would like to share with you some of the activities of Hebrew University on the hot topic of sustainability. Indeed, sustainability is highly related to global warming, reduction in ecological diversity, pollution, unequal distribution of resources, illness, and more. Human activities for thousands of years, and more so in the past 100 of years, have been conducted without fully taking into account the need to preserve Earth's environmental and ecological system. And this is the challenge. Development, but along with protection and rehabilitation. How is Hebrew University approaching this challenge? Our leadership initiated the establishment of the Hebrew University Center for Sustainability. By definition, sustainability is composed of several different fields of interest. For example, basic science, environment, economics, technology, law, social sciences, health, policy, ethics, and more. The center was established to promote knowledge via multi- and interdisciplinary research and teaching, but we are also taking responsibility and leading local, national, and global activities. The center is based on 3 pillars: teaching, research, and interface for impact. Teaching, we have one graduate school that involves more than 150 students. We have over 100 teachers and over 100 courses. We have 6 different teaching tracks, and the students come from 4 different faculties. Interface for impact is within the university, but also beyond the borders of the university. On the left, we have 4 circles within the university. Our first mission was to engage Hebrew University staff and students to be involved in our activities. For example, we're encouraging a track of scholarships for students that are involved in sustainability activities. Green Campus has been for centuries conducting sustainable practices on campus, and we are thrilled that they joined our activities. Just this week, we have a new idea, and we had a meeting on transferring from fossil to green financing, including the university and even our pensions. On the right hand, we have 4 circles that are looking beyond the university borders. For example, interaction with the public and private sector and civil society. We have an ongoing, amazing project of professors from the Institute of Earth Sciences that recorded lectures on climate change for teenagers. We are starting a citizen science lab that will measure air quality and shade within the city of Jerusalem, and we are currently building a program for co-design with policy makers. Finally, the research. The center published a call for multidisciplinary research. We had over 40 researchers that applied, 10 full proposals were written, 4 research projects were funded, and here they are listed. For example, 1, Smart Urban Trees brought together a tree ecologist with a geophysicist to measure the tree functions within the city of Modi'in. The second research is talking about learning from the past, brought together a researcher of history and a researcher from the Department of Geography. And concerning topics 3 and 4, in a minute or 2, you'll hear all about them from the researchers themselves. Thank you very much.
Climate change is probably the greatest long-term challenge facing the human race. These were the words Tony Blair, then the British Prime Minister, chose to open the UK's climate change program over 15 years ago. Indeed, his words are still echoing today when it has become even clearer that the climate crisis is the most pressing global issue of our times because of its unprecedented destructive effects on humanity. Scientists agree on this fact, and increasingly so do politicians, decision makers, and mainstream media. And this realization is slowly penetrating the general public too. For example, here in Israel. However, this concerning reality has not yet sufficiently translated into action, policy change, or everyday behavioral change. Efforts to address the climate crisis have so far focused primarily on international and national level policies and solutions. But scholars and activists have long argued that it's not enough, and the local and regional focus is required to create concrete alternatives and directions. You're probably all familiar with the slogan, think global, act local. But reaching the goal of thinking globally while acting locally is often easier said than done. Because people tend to ignore what they don't see or experience in person. And even when people do experience extreme weather conditions, such as floods or wildfires, they are not necessarily linking these disasters to human activity and its impact on the planet. We call this gap between the global crisis and the local response required scale mismatch.
This is not about the science of climate. It's about people and policy. We are both policy researchers, and we study people, organizations, and political systems responsible for taking steps for addressing a crisis. My focus on public policy and Itai's expertise in civil society converge as we are both concerned with advancing environmental and climate research. And that's how we have formed multiple collaborations, including this one. So what needs to be done to address the crisis? We first must convince the general public and policymakers of the urgency of the crisis, and then create opportunities for people to change their behavior. And these 2 steps can only happen at the local level for 2 main reasons. First, localities are affected differently by climate change. People in these localities have different concerns, different identities, and different understanding of what a sustainable lifestyle is. For example, a coastal community like Netanya or Miami Beach in Florida is more concerned with sea level rise, while desert communities like Kibbutzim in the Arava are more concerned with water supply. Second, because response to climate change is geographically dependent. For example, in cities, car usage can be significantly reduced by using buses and trains, a solution which is less relevant in rural communities. Still, the question is how to translate a crisis at the global scale into direct, visible, locally tailored, and clearly understood plans. Therefore, we seek to identify effective mechanisms to translate a global climate crisis to the local level.
Based on our prior research, we chose to focus on one such mechanism in our current research: NGOs and civil society actors. We do so for three main reasons. First, NGOs serve as a channel of communication between state and citizens, possibly mediating the sometimes thorny relationship between governments and the public. Second, in policy implementation, when we know both where we want to go and how to get there, we can implement it administratively. But when we know where we want to be, but not how to get there, then experimentation is needed. NGOs are well suited to experiment and take risks, skills which governments are less good at because they lack flexibility and tend to respond slowly to new needs. And third, NGOs can mobilize participation and civic engagement, recruit volunteers, access local knowledge, and offer closer connection to the general public. We suggest that the transition from global problems to regional and local ones, what we labeled scale mismatch, can be achieved through public participation and NGO-led deliberative processes. Therefore, we ask two main questions. First, how do national-level climate NGOs act to translate the global climate crisis to the local level? And second, to what extent do deliberative and participatory methods contribute to the translation process? We study these questions by looking at two initiatives currently underway in Israel. These initiatives are unique because they are led by a coalition of more than 80 Israeli environmental NGOs with the goal of introducing the climate crisis locally and listening to the local voices in national climate decision-making. One initiative is a series of 14 regional climate summits that are taking place throughout Israel this year. These summits spread from the Galilee up north down to the city of Eilat in the far south, are conducted in collaboration with local and regional municipalities and are meant to consult the public on challenges emanating from the climate crisis. The second is a citizen assembly on climate change, an initiative planned to take place in the coming months where one municipality will be chosen to hold an assembly with the participation of 80 to 150 of its residents. This mini public representative group will undergo a guided process of designing a shared policy vision for a local climate plan. The model of citizen assemblies is a groundbreaking model of deliberative democracy currently being experimented in different parts of the world, including the United Kingdom, Ireland, and France.
Even at the current early stage of our work on this topic, we can already see some very interesting insights related to the Regional Climate Summit. Although the initiative was centrally organized, these regional summits were locally tailored and highly varied. We see variation in modes of participation, stakeholders involved, and topics discussed, among other factors. One example is diverse modes of participation. Some summits are featuring workshops and family-oriented happenings, while others have organized roundtables, lectures, and by academic experts, declaration signing, tours, and use of social media and digital platforms to increase public participation. Another example is the variety of stakeholders involved. Each summit was led and organized by different composition of national and local NGOs, local municipalities, partners, and social organizations that were willing to join the process. In some cases, it was local partners who actually led the process. This implies that there is no one pattern for cross-sector collaboration, and it is highly dependent on the local organizational and cultural ecosystems. To conclude, Looking at the still emerging climate summit and citizen assembly offer us a unique opportunity to study real-life experimental setting where NGOs and local stakeholders collaborate. The regional diversity that appears to take place in this initiative will help us identify key factors and perhaps new leadership responsible for translating a global challenge into a local response, and examine the inclusiveness and participatory nature of these efforts and its success reaching out the public. This perhaps could assist in answering the tough question: how should governments and people in Israel and elsewhere deal with the global climate crisis?
Everything else can wait, agriculture cannot. This sentence was said by Norman Borlaug when he received the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1970 for solving the problem of food security all over the world. And nowadays, with the climate change and the increase in population, this sentence is even more valid than ever. And we have a major challenge to solve the problem of food security, and one of the major problems is actually the climate change, which we always speak about climate change in terms of average increasing, but the main problem is the extreme events. And we can see here temperature anomalies, which red represent higher temperature, and we can see that nowadays everything is red all over the world, and even dark red. And this is a major challenge for us to develop crops that will be adapted to the new climate. And for that, we established a new center in the Faculty of Agriculture to study crop adaptation to climate change. And you can see here a set of greenhouses that sit on a rail that we can move them and change the different scenarios of climate change to increase temperature, to change the distribution of rainfall. So we are able to produce better crop that adapted to the climate. But we have another challenge, and this is a major challenge that because of what we did, and we did a very good job in terms of breeding. And if we look on our wild species that you can see here in different colors, that we have a lot of diversity and a lot of adaptation mechanism, during the breeding process, we make our crops very uniform, as we can see here in green. So all the plants are highly productive, but they are not adapted to the climate, and they are not ready for the new climate that we're going to have in the future. So what we are trying to do in a lab is to reintroduce genes from the wild into the domesticated crops in order to improve their adaptivity to the climate. And we are fortunate that in Israel is the center of diversity for wild wheat. So every year we are going in nature around Israel for different habitats, from location with 200 millimeters to location with more than 1,000 millimeters. And we look for new alleles that we can find all over Israel. And we take these genes and we try to introduce them into the modern cultivars. And I will show you here two examples from our study. The first one that we can see here, you can see the elite cultivar when it's growing under well water condition, how it look well, but under drought stress, it's look quite poor because it's losing a lot of its biomass. On the other end, the line that we introduced, the wild genes, you can see that under well water, you have very high biomass, so it's producing much more productive. But on the other end, under drought, it's able to produce more roots. So you will see that they have bigger root system, so it's getting deeper to the soil layer to get more water, which result in the fact that it's more cooler under drought. And we can see it here with the thermal imaging, when we can see that the wild plant is very yellowish because it suffers from stress, whereas the new genes, the new cultivar that we developed, is more cooler. And these traits that we introduce of deeper roots enable the plants to produce 30% more yield under drought. So this is one strategy to improve the cultivars. But on the other hand, we also need technology to help the farmer to utilize these new cultivars. So what we are using here is a very advanced technology, and in this case, we're using drones that we're taking pictures of the plants during the growing season, and we are studying how the plant is performing in order to understand what is the status of the plants, what is the status of the water stress, and what the plants need. And using advanced algorithm, you can see here the different colors that represent the status of the different cultivars. But this technology is very expensive, and we cannot use it for the farmers. So for that, we are trying to develop much simple technology. And you can see here a smartphone that everyone has in pocket that we can go to the field, take picture of the plants, and after few seconds, the farmers know exactly what is the status of the plants. So we visualize that the farmers could use these technologies all over the world in order to produce better plants.
Well, Tzvika, it sounds like you're making wonderful advancements which can really improve the resilience of wheat crops. But what if farmers aren't interested in adopting new crops or are challenged by a new method of farming? It's not so easy to change people's habits. You can see here, for instance, how drip lines are used as a fence. Here, a mosquito net is used as a fence, and here, a mosquito net is used for fishing. These are examples for great technologies which human ingenuity developed, but without relevant adaptation, people often don't use for their intended purposes. I am sure that the farmer who used a mosquito net for fencing or the bride who used it as a wedding gown benefited from the net. But this doesn't help to reduce instances of malaria, which was the original purpose of this innovation. Why is it so difficult for people to adopt technologies? In the next few minutes, I will explore the challenges faced by farmers in poorer regions of the global south, for whom many technologies are developed in the aim of alleviating poverty or improving food security. Well, first of all, these farmers need to have access to technology, meaning the technology needs to be available and affordable. Just as important, farmers need to understand the way technology works and be aware of its characteristics. However, farmers will not use it if it doesn't fit their needs or reality. It is not enough that the agronomists or engineers see technological solution to a problem. It has to be in line with the problem or need farmers identify themselves. Specifically, in our case, Tzvika and his team are offering adoption of a new wheat crop to farmers who usually farm other products and using a new technology which will require them to change the way they make decisions about farming. This is a behavioral change which is not easily done. The farmers who grow most of the food in the global south are smallholder farmers who work, as you can see here, in small plots of land together with family and, in some instances, other farmers. This is labor-intensive farming with little machinery and often poor access to water or roads to buy inputs and sell one's yields. Development interventions which aim to improve agriculture practices, yields, and profits are often based on this type of demonstration farms, where new crops and technologies are presented, often offering international experts advice and expensive technological solutions. Farmers are invited and expected to visit the demonstration farms and implement the learning in the farm. However, it's close to impossible for farmers to implement such learning or understand the best use of technologies with short-term advice from international experts. As we are interested in creating a sustainable change, we will follow a different path. We've chosen to begin our work in Uganda, a net importer of wheat, which only produces 5% of the wheat it consumes. To strengthen local production, government is looking for resilient wheat crops which will produce high yields in higher and more variable temperatures. With such crops, it hopes to introduce wheat production to area in which smallholder farmers currently grow maize, beans, and other staple foods in eastern Uganda. How will we ensure sustainable adoption of this great technology Tzvika presented? What will make farmers in eastern Uganda transition to wheat production with our suggested crop, using their mobile phone to help them to make decisions in farming? We hope to do this in 3 stages on the ground. We will begin with an assessment of the current reality in the regions in which they are supposed to transition to wheat production. Working with the Ugandan Ministry of Agriculture, we will interview farmers and other stakeholders to examine farmers and farming methods and the degree of guidance which provides by the local and private and public sectors, farmers' incentives in farming and access to inputs and markets, and more. Secondly, we will conduct market research to examine the potential impact of the introduction of wheat in terms of farmers' potential profit and the impact on the availability of existing crops. We will explore potential ecological impact and develop a work plan for best adoption on the ground. When our suggested technology will be introduced, we will work closely with the farmers and the local Bureau of Agriculture to examine the process of adoption, challenges, and constraints to adapt the technology whenever needed. We believe that with this process, local farmers will be interested in adopting the new crops and will do so sustainably. Thank you.
Thank you, Yael, Itai, Galit, Zvi, and Reut. And now, I would also like to introduce you for the first time to a new and very exciting research area that we are now developing at the university. The land of Israel is the cradle of our civilization. It even got a name, the Fertile Crescent. It turns out that there are precious objects of all kinds that are found in this region in caves and other archaeological digs that are truly unique and provide unmatched insights into the life and culture of our ancestors. Recent advances in technology enables us to identify genomic properties of fossils that are found here. When combined with historians and archaeologists that uncover hints into the culture that existed here many years ago, we can gain unique insights into the life of our ancestors and to understand for the first time many aspects of their history and culture. And all this in a region that was the starting point of this civilization. Moreover, at the Hebrew University, we already have some of the leading researchers in ancient DNA, archaeology, and history. Together, we plan to establish a unique center of prehistory, a center that can instantly become the world leader on prehistory of this region. We will now hear from Professor Liran Carmel and Eran Meshorer, who specialize in the analysis of ancient DNA, and then we will hear Professor Irela Hovers, who specializes in the archaeology of prehistory.
How amazing humans are. Within an evolutionary blink of an eye, we became the undisputed rulers of Earth, painted the Sistine Chapel, developed cities and smartphones, reached outer space, sequenced the entire human genome, and developed a vaccine against COVID-19. These achievements were all enabled by our huge brains, 3 times larger than expected from a creature of our size. But how did our brains become so big? This is one of the most intriguing open questions in science. And could our increased intelligence underlie the plethora of neurological disorders that became so prevalent in modern societies? For example, 1 in 54 children in the US are diagnosed with autistic spectrum disorder, and 1 in 6 people in the US, over 75, develop Alzheimer's disease. How did we become so prone to autism and Alzheimer's? Can we find the factors that led to their abundance in present-day humans? Did all human groups with big brains develop neurological disorders? Were they all successful? Neanderthals, for example, had large brains just like us. Why did they disappear? And why did our ancestors survive? Could it be that we developed abstract language and they did not? Maybe, but nobody knows. Literally hundreds of research labs around the world are currently working on these questions. Here at the Hebrew University, we are establishing the Multidisciplinary Center for Ancient DNA to address these and many more questions.
Roughly 10 years ago, a revolution in science boosted our ability to sequence ancient DNA, creating entirely new opportunities to answer these questions from a novel, exciting, and unexpected angle. So how can ancient DNA help us? DNA not only stores the information required to build and operate our bodies, but also records our genetic past. DNA is a very stable molecule that can survive for surprisingly long periods. Would you believe that DNA has survived hundreds of thousands of years and still has been successfully sequenced? The field of ancient DNA begins with this newfound ability to obtain DNA from archaeological remains.
Hebrew University's Institute of Archaeology, Israel's first, with its century-long tradition of excellence, boasts over 100 excavation sites, including landmark projects such as Masada and Bet Alpha, as well as sites from which ancient DNA has been retrieved, such as Hatzor and Bet Maacha, shown here on the map. Today, Hebrew University researchers are active in dozens of sites, from the Negev to the Upper Galilee. Many of them are shown here in red on the map, unearthing early stone tools, palaces, temples, and synagogues, as well as burials, bones, and teeth. All these materials help us reconstruct our own past. For example, who lived here at the historical border city of Abel Bet Maacha, bridging Iron Age cultures some 3,000 years ago? And how do they relate to peoples living in the region today? The excavation process is a painstaking one. Here, at the site of Amud Cave in northern Israel, we excavated the 55,000-year-old skeleton of a Neanderthal infant. Unearthing this tiny skeleton took an entire month. Because of its young age at death, only 6 months, give or take, this partial skeleton provided indication that some very specific Neanderthal features, for example, in the mandible, did not form due to lifelong activity, but were determined by genetics. Such recovered bones serve as the basis for the entire process of ancient DNA analysis.
In the ancient DNA lab, the bone is first ground to powder. Then DNA is extracted using special chemicals and then sent to a sequencing machine. The DNA sequences are then analyzed and compared to DNA of modern humans and apes. This labor-intensive procedure is carried out by teams of geneticists, computational biologists, and molecular evolutionists, and it takes years. This process results in the ability to reconstruct our past and answer questions such as, how did we become what we are today? How did the illnesses of modern societies emerge? And what might this mean for preventing or even treating such illnesses? And can we actually de-extinct prehistoric beasts?
Well, it is not science fiction. Spectacular specimens have been successfully sequenced, like Yucca, this 33,000-year-old young male mammoth from Siberia, and like the 3,300-year-old Otzi, a natural mummy from the Alps. The ancient DNA revolution has led to mind-boggling discoveries. For example, as you might well know, we are all a little bit Neanderthal, carrying roughly 2% of the genome, attesting to ancient mixing between our ancestors. And the Hebrew University has already made major contributions to the field of ancient DNA. For example,
the Hebrew University led a project that sequenced ancient DNA from dozens of Canaanite individuals from Israel, Lebanon, and Jordan, showing that they arrived from the Caucasus, mixed with local populations, and then contributed to the genetics of all present-day populations in the region. Once a melting pot, always a melting pot.
Another example is the Hebrew University team that developed a pioneering tool that allows for inferring not only the genetics of individuals, but also how their genes worked. The team discovered hundreds of genes that worked differently in modern versus archaic humans, many of them related to brain development and to neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's disease, autism, and schizophrenia. Using this tool, the team was also able to answer a long-standing question of what is the shape of the Neanderthal voice box. The team showed that the anatomy of the Neanderthal voice box differed from that of modern humans. Could this be the first clue regarding the speech capabilities of archaic humans?
Another exciting example was selected by Science magazine among the top scientific breakthroughs of 2019. A mysterious type of big-brained human called the Denisovan was discovered using ancient DNA. However, its physical remains are scarce, the biggest one to date being this jaw that you see here. A Hebrew University team, again using the tool that shows which genes work differently in the different humans, was able to offer to the world the first anatomical reconstruction of this elusive type of human. These examples show how collaborations among multiple and diverse disciplines lead to exciting scientific breakthroughs.
The Hebrew University Center for Ancient DNA will be a hub for synergetic work among leading researchers from many disciplines, such as archaeology, geology, chemistry, medicine, statistics, genetics, epigenetics, geography, history, and our national collections. The center positions the Hebrew University at the forefront of ancient DNA research and will strengthen its global impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Eran, Liran, and Erela. These short lectures we like to call Huji Talks became a tradition of the Board of Governors, and it provides all of us a glimpse into the top-notch research being conducted at the Hebrew University. Promoting this kind of cutting-edge science is possible thanks to all of you, our dedicated friends. In fact, for 2 years in a row, donations to the university have been breaking all-time highs. And 4 years into our centennial campaign, we have already raised $532 million. On that note, I am pleased to invite our Vice President for Advancement and External Relations, Ambassador Yossi Gal, and our new Vice President for Strategy and Diversity, Professor Mona Khoury-Kassabri, who will share some words regarding fundraising for a better world.
Thank you, Asher. Thank you, Mr. President. And welcome, my dear friend Mona, to your first Board of Governors as Vice President. I'm truly honored and proud to share this stage with you. My dear friends around the world, this is our second and hopefully last virtual Board of Governors, because we truly and honestly miss all of you. We want to see you here with us. Last year, the first Corona year, we reported to you that fundraising-wise, we reached an all-time high record of $147 million. As you've just heard from President Cohen, we have now once again broken the record, and it now stands at a little over $150 million a year. And all of this, my friends, is thanks to you, thanks to the wonderful friends of the Hebrew University all around the world. And with this great news, I wish to turn now to my friend, to Mona.
Yes, Yossi, I couldn't agree more. And thank you for that warm welcome, my dear friend Yossi. I'm thrilled to be here as the University Vice President for Strategy and Diversity, and especially excited to introduce this film featuring our amazing supporters. To a great extent, the success of the Hebrew University and its eminence on the global stage has been made possible by our close friends and donors. For today's event, we asked a select group of our donors and friends 3 questions about their investment and influence in the Hebrew University and how they see the university utilizing its academic expertise for a better world. Let's take a look.
How's Jerusalem?
Don't worry, I won't do that during the interview.
Cheryl, as you know, Hebrew University is driven by its mission to develop science and knowledge for the benefit of humankind.
Given that, how do you think our initiatives contribute for a better world?
Hebrew University really exemplifies the commitment to improve the world.
This is sort of mitzion tetzet Torah.
Much of this culture and energy is driven by the Jewish sechel and the urge to succeed.
They certainly are working on smarter cities, on green energy, on food sustainability.
The work they have done in agriculture, the environment, technology, health, science has just propelled them as a true leader in their commitment to developing research that converts practical applications into solving real-world problems.
And much of the benefits emanating from research that is ongoing at the Hebrew University will undoubtedly contribute to the betterment of humankind.
For Cheryl and I, we're very passionate about the research that's being done in healthcare. We're enthusiastically embracing the biosafety lab, not just because of the potential impact of combating COVID-19, but also to help Israel and help Hebrew University build the infrastructure so we can combat future pandemics.
To have the opportunity to be at a place with so much embodied in the past, present, and the future. Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. The collaborations and intersections to be part of a community that really cares about repairing the world, improving the world, protecting the world, that they have demonstrated is really special.
It betters not just Israelis, but it certainly betters their neighbors, the Middle East, but also the wider world.
If this gets edited in there, you guys are going to be in a lot of trouble.
Here at Hebrew University, we are always looking forwards to the future while taking pride in our past.
Where do you want to see us in 10 to 20 years? And what is your vision for the future of the universe? Oh, excuse me.
For the university.
Can I start over? And what is your vision for the future of the university?
I would like to see the university in the future maintain and grow its status, its reputation, especially internationally.
I've always thought the Hebrew University should have a school of engineering. If I was Asher for a day and I had a rich uncle who wanted to name a building, I would try to build out a world-class engineering school.
The last 2 years demonstrated to us that we are able to communicate worldwide much better. You can have virtual chapters and branches worldwide.
If I look at longer vision, the lifespan of those students is going to be between 100 and 110 years. People are going to work until they're 90. They will have a second career. You know, maybe you started initially an Institute of Future Learning. This is a big opportunity that's going to be impacting a lot of the university communities worldwide.
You go.
The university needs to continue to strive for excellence.
Maintain and grow its status as not only the #1 university in Israel, but also as one of the great universities of the world.
But also about how we learn to live together in this big world of ours, in this complex world, tolerate each other, respect each other, live side by side.
And this is how we distribute our knowledge and wisdom worldwide.
Have an impact on the world.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Did we get a 10? Kind of.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Yossi and Muna. As you know, our faculty members over the years received numerous awards and accolades. Recently, Professor Eliezer Rabinovich from the Physics Institute at the Hebrew University was elected as the president of the Council of CERN. CERN is the most important scientific project in Europe, and being the president of the Council of CERN is a great honor for Professor Rabinovich, for the Hebrew University, and for the Israeli Academy in general. Professor Rabinovich was previously involved in other intriguing projects as well. I'm now going to interview Professor Rabinovich. Shalom, Professor Rabinovich.
Shalom, Professor Cohen.
We know each other quite well, so we are going to use first name as we always do. Hi, Eliezer.
Hi, Asher.
First of all, congratulations for being elected to the president of the Council of CERN. Before getting into this very important nomination, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I feel privileged and also emotionally involved when I talk to you here, my president, at a distance of about 500 meters from the hospital where I was born in 1946. I define myself as an Israeli, but as a Jerusalemite. This place is, and this university is very dear to my heart. I started off studying here, wanting to be a cowboy, then wanting to be a diplomat, till I realized that diplomats have to do what they are told. So I had to relinquish this career, and about at the age of 12 or 13, I decided I want to become a physicist and understand how the world works. After doing my military service, I came as a student to the Hebrew University. I furthered my education, and after completing my education in Israel, I went for a postdoctoral fellowship in the United States, and I returned to become a senior lecturer at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where I spent since 1977, I think.
So you are a bona fide Hebrew University citizen.
Yes, and I'm proud of it.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about CERN.
If you want to travel to space, the names which come to your mind are Cape Kennedy or Baikonur. If you want to see where humanity produces the highest possible energy for the benefit of acquiring knowledge, you go to CERN. CERN, which is situated on the border between France and Switzerland, is an organization which symbolizes two things. At one level, it is an organization which does the technologically and scientifically most frontier research in trying to uncover the basic laws of nature and what are the basic constituents which make matter. At another level, CERN is a place where Europe was able to heal after World War II, and it's probably the best example of international collaboration all over the planet.
It is fair to say that CERN is the most important scientific project in Europe. Would you say that?
Okay, I mean, you want me to begin to fight with our biologist colleagues?
No, I don't, but it's very clear that it's a very truly important and very salient scientific project.
It's definitely, it was the first joint, and I think it's a jewel in the European crown of research, no doubt.
And you have been active in CERN for a number of years now, right?
Well, yes, I've been active quite a few years at CERN, maybe more than I want to remember right now. I first was actually scientifically involved. I'm still scientifically involved. And then there was a certain watershed moment for me. I heard the president of France speak about physics. And I sat there, green of envy, and I thought, when will I succeed that presidents of my country will be able to just speak about science and peace without other issues? And I was determined then to make a dream come true, make Israel a full member of this institute.
And now you are the president of the council of this glorious organization. Again, congratulations. I think one of the things that people know about CERN is the fact that you discovered this elementary particle, the Higgs, right? Can you say something about that?
So let me give the general perspective. We are humans, and we extend from a few millimeters when we are born, when we are made, and then maybe we go up to 2 meters and 72 centimeters. I think that's the tallest man which exists. And we have the pretension that we want to understand how the whole universe works, from the largest to the smallest, all the material universe. And in order to do that, we need to be able to reduce the matter into its constituents and the laws so that they can appear on one T-shirt. And amazingly, even though nobody owes it to us, we succeeded to do that. And the Higgs particle is one element in that puzzle which enters on one slide of a PowerPoint and explains how the whole material in the universe is composed.
And in order to do that, you had to shoot particles at a very high level, at a very high speed, in order to get the energy required to detect the element, right?
Yes, you make it sound violent, and indeed for the particles it's very violent. When you want to see what something is built out of, we use the most primitive way possible, we break it. And if we want to understand what it's really built out of, we have to break it with the highest energy we can provide. And at CERN, the highest energy that human beings know how to provide is provided. Particles are smashed against each other, and then the results of these experiments tell us what are the constituents of matter.
So, the Higgs was found a few years ago, and now what's the next goal of CERN?
Well, the next goal is that, let me give you a story. Let's say we are together now, Columbus and the funder, Isabel, Queen of Spain, I'm funding you, and I'm sending you on the ocean in a ship, and you tell me that you can reach India. Now, what I actually is much more exciting than reaching India is finding America on the way. And this is what Columbus and some people before him succeeded in doing. What we are doing now, we are sailing into the ocean, and we are hoping to find a new America.
In short, they don't really know what they want to do. They are trying
Sorry. As president of the university, you are very aware of the fact that when you talk about discovery, by definition, discovery is a discovery of the unknown. So if you want to make breakthrough, if you want to make new things, you can't just do small extrapolations and be assured what's waiting for you when you do the next step. You want to reach the unknown.
Well, I'll say it this way. We don't know actually what you're going to find, but we do know that whatever it is that you'll do is going to be groundbreaking, and it's going to affect all of us and let us understand better how the universe is, what the universe is composed of.
We are very curious as scientists, as a human race, and indeed, that's what we want to achieve.
Well, we are looking forward to hearing more about that, but I want, you should know that Professor Rabinovich was also involved in other interesting projects. One of them is the establishment of a small accelerator here in the Middle East. Tell us a little bit about that as well.
So again, I want to thank the Hebrew University for providing an environment where you can dream and where you can make the dreams come true without too many of your colleagues laughing at you. And one of these dreams, as a Jerusalemite, was to cross to the other side and collaborate and contribute to our neighborhood. And indeed, in Jordan, we succeed to build a light source, because the Middle East needs light more than it needs collisions, so it's a light source. in which the countries participate include Israel, it includes the Palestinian Authority, it includes Egypt, it includes Turkey, it includes the Greek part of Cyprus, which is no small feat. And then if you go, you could see Jordan, you see Iran, and you see Pakistan, all of us collaborating together for a common goal, for humanity and for our own interests for over 2 decades.
Let me make it clear. You actually created a scientific project in which all the scientists of this region, including Iran, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, the Palestinian Authority, and of course Israel, collaborate.
That is correct. Yes, we showed it's possible.
This is quite amazing. We hope that it will go beyond science. Right now it works well in science, and it's, I think, another very impressive achievement. So, Professor Rabinovich, Eliezer, again, congratulations for being elected to the President of the Council of CERN. It's a great honor, as I said, for you, for the Hebrew University, and for the Israeli Academia.
Thank you, Asher.
And thank you, Professor Cohen, Professor Rabinovich. We wish you good luck in your future endeavor. Joining us back on stage, I'd like to welcome back Professor Asher Cohen and Ambassador Yossi Gal. Hello. And Harel Bet-On. We are now moving to the formal part of this session, nominations. I'd like to invite the chairman of the Board of Managers, Harel Bet-On, to present the recommendation of the search committee for election of the chairman of the Board of Governors. Mr. Bet-On, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Before we proceed, I respectfully ask Chairman Dan Schlesinger to leave the meeting. Dan Schlesinger has served as the chairman of the International Board of Governors and the Executive Committee of the Hebrew University since 2018. His first term has come to an end. According to the general statutes of the university, the election or re-election of the chairperson of the board requires the appointment of a search committee which will present its recommendation for approval by the board. The search committee, which I headed, consists of the following members. Michael Dunkel from our friends in Australia, Mr. Clive Kabachnik from the US, Mr. Isaac Kay from the UK, and Ms. Monette Malevsky from our friends in Canada. The committee met, unfortunately by Zoom, and considered Dan's long-standing commitment to the university, including serving as national president and Midwest region president of the American Friends, serving on numerous committees of both the American Friends and the Board of Governors, honors and recognitions awarded to Dan by the university throughout the years, and above all, his role as chairman of the Board of Governors and the Executive Committee over the past 3 years, a role he has fulfilled to the great satisfaction of all committee members. The committee unanimously decided to recommend his nomination for a second term as chairman of the Board of Governors. If there are any reservations about Dan's appointment, please type them in the chat and we will address them. This is a good time to thank all the members of the committee for being for making their contribution and being on the committee, and all of you for joining the meeting. Well, if there are no reservations, we will consider the nomination approved unanimously. Please ask Dan to return to the meeting. Okay. Hello, Dan. How are you?
Good, Harel. How are you?
Very good. I'm happy to inform you that the board has decided unanimously to nominate you as chairman of the Board of Governors for another term. I thank you for your service, and I wish you continued success in this important role. And with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Harel. Thanks to you and the search committee. Thanks to the Board of Governors, to the administration of the university, and my many great friends around the university community. This is a great honor that you bestow on me, and I can't express how grateful I am. I was pleased at the presentation today because it not only emphasized the greatness of the platform that the Hebrew University has established and the achievements over the past year, but also the tremendous challenges that the university faces going forward to continue to create a better world. And I think that serves as a model, a paradigm for where we are as a board. We have done great things following the leadership of our predecessors and helped the university accomplish tremendous goals over the past year, over the period of this pandemic. And yet the challenges that we face as a board to help the university are ever greater. And I can't tell you how confident I am, how grateful I am that I know I can rely on the support, the commitment going forward of all of you as we help better the university and thereby better the world. So thanks again to everyone. With that, we have a little bit of business to accomplish before we can break for the day. We have nominations. These were sent out to everyone last week electronically, and I think we have slides now that we can put up to show the various committees and positions that we have to elect people to today. First of all, for the executive committee, there's a slide that should be coming up soon that will show the public representatives that are up for election. And I should note that these nominations were created with careful deliberation among the people involved, among the administration, among the faculty, among the various friends groups. So these are very well thought out nominations. Given the limitations of Zoom, what I'd like to do is follow the same procedure that we followed last year, which is if you are in favor of these nominations, you can simply say nothing and we will interpret that as a vote in favor. If anyone has a concern or would like to vote no or a negative vote, please use the chat function for that. And with that, let me present this first slide, which is the members to be reelected as public representatives to the executive committee. Again, all in favor, do nothing. Anyone who has a concern, please use the chat function. I'll wait a few seconds for that. Seeing no concerns, that first slide of public representatives to the executive committee is hereby elected. Next, we have members of the Budget and Finance Committee, one new member, Dr. Shuki Gleitman, and then re-electing 3 members, Antoinette Grossman, Monette Milewski, and Ira Lee Ike-Sorkin. Again, if you are in favor, please do nothing. If you have a concern, please use the chat function for that. Seeing no problems there, let's move on. Those people are elected. Let's move on to the next slide, which has both endowment funds committee members and matters of control committee, Advocate Ruth Horn from Israel. Again, use the chat function if you have any concern about that. And seeing no concerns raised, those people are elected. Now we move on to new members of the board. There's a slide coming up with new nominations. If anyone has any concerns, questions about those people, please use the chat function for that. And seeing nothing raised, we hereby elect those new nominations. And then we have 3 slides of members to re-elect, or two slides, I guess. No, 3 slides of members to re-elect. Let's look at those. Hold that up for just a couple of seconds, and then the next one. And we can proceed now to follow the same procedure for those 3 slides of re-election of governors. And seeing no concerns raised on the chat, those people are all elected. I would also note that we are moving on that last slide, moving 4 people to the status of honorary governors. These are people that I'd like to particularly thank and congratulate for their devoted service over the years. Ilan Chet, Alan Fisk, Charles Corky Goodman, and Nancy Berman Block. Those people will be honored as honorary governors going forward. Okay, I think we are done with our business for this part of the meeting. Thank you all very much, and let me turn it back over to Professor Cohn for his closing remarks. Thanks again.
Hello, everyone. First of all, let me congratulate my dear friend, Dan, for his election to the next term as the chairman of the Board of Governors. We worked together over the last 3 years, and it was just simply absolutely great to work with Dan, who is as committed a friend and a member of the Hebrew University as there is any. And it's just pure pleasure to work with you, Dan. So I'm looking forward very much to the next 3 years together. I'm sure we will be able to do a lot of things with your help. It's very needed, and I look forward to that as well. I think we had about 250 attendees in today's meeting, which is great. And it's an opportunity for me to thank all of you again for being what you are, great friends of the Hebrew University, part of our family. It was great seeing you today. I hope to see you tomorrow as well in the next plenary session. And now I asked Hila to take the place.
So thank you, Professor Cohen. We have reached the end of our first day. We will meet again tomorrow, same place, same time, 5 p.m. Israel time. Tomorrow, we will hear more fascinating lectures, watch a video featuring progress on our construction projects, host the annual award and scholarship ceremony honoring students, researchers, and professors across disciplines. We hope you have enjoyed this broadcast and our time together. I would like to thank all the lecturers and everyone who took part in today's program. And of course, a special thank you to you, the friends and supporters of the Hebrew University, working together for a better world. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.